Welcome parents to Hamilton High School's Parent Presentation Series. We started these parent presentations about 4 years ago because we saw there was a need to provide some support services to parents in our community and within our school. These parent presentations provide a wide range of topics. We have expert speakers that talk about social media, communication, mental health issues, all the areas that teens are going through, and to educate parents on what they can do, resources they can obtain, and just support services. We also have a student educational series at the same time in the evening, so you can bring your child with you and they will go to a separate classroom and they will get education on the same topic. Most teachers give extra credit, but your child will always get 2 volunteer hours for every session they attend. And at Hamilton, we also have support groups that the social workers run. We have support groups for anxiety, depression, and self-harm. We have groups for grief, substance abuse, anger management, and we also provide one-on-one support to students, as well as meet with parents if there's issues you might be struggling with and need some professional guidance. You can come and meet with us. And so at Hamilton, we provide a great deal of services. Please contact us if you need any additional support, or we can sit down and talk about ways that we can help you and your child be successful during these high school years. Thank you so much for coming to our presentations, and these presentations, as you can see, are videotaped and will be available 2 weeks after every presentation, along with the PowerPoint and any other materials. We will have them on our website. So thank you and have a great day. We're so thankful that he takes his time out to come here after his hard day of work. Yeah. So thank you, Garron.
My pleasure. It's a joy. I like doing these kind of presentations. I've been in private practice for about a little over 4 years. Before that, worked in a variety of different places in mental health. And so I'm really excited to do things like this. I like group presentations, I like group work, but in private practice you don't get a lot of that opportunity. So working with multiple people is a good break from working one-on-one or with couples all day long. My specialties are first and foremost adolescents. I work a lot with teens. I actually had a parent the other day tell me, which I don't know if she wasn't exaggerating or not, but she said she called 45 therapists and they all said they wouldn't work with adolescents or teens. And so, which is really sad because it's such a great population to work with. I really enjoy it. And I also work a lot with addiction of all sorts, both adolescents and adults, and work with marriages and relationship stuff as well. And other general mental health, but those are the 3 areas I specialize in. So if you have any questions, please, I want this to be really informal, especially with the amount of people that are here. Let's just have it really intimate, and we can really talk about a lot of stuff. I'm doing it a little different than I have before, and I think some of your faces are familiar. And so usually there's a PowerPoint presentation, and there's, it's a little more formal. I want this to be really informal and more of a discussion than a presentation. I think that goes better. It's more my comfort when they started asking me to provide PowerPoints and stuff like that. I got a little uncomfortable because I know when I was in graduate school and undergraduate, but mainly graduate, the professors that did PowerPoints the whole time were just painstaking and did not really enjoy those classes, so I don't want to be that. And I've had an opportunity to teach at ASU, and I don't think I did a single PowerPoint for the year in the 4 different classes I taught there. So they're not my specialty. I like just having discussions. Any questions? in regards to me or anything of that nature or tonight? Excellent. Welcome. Come on in. And so I know with the video, I need, if you ask a question, I may repeat that question, so to make sure it gets on there well. But we'll just kind of go over this. A couple of things first. As I was thinking about stress and how to handle it, stress for me is like a lot of issues that come in my office, is that how we deal with it is very individualized. What works for you may not work for you or me. And so I don't know what's going to work for a client or somebody I'm working with until I really get to know them. So in situations like this, it's a little general, and so I know that. So bear with us with that aspect, that it's hard to get into each one of your specific needs and personalities and whatnot and how you deal with stress. But we can talk, I think, about a lot of good stuff and basic stuff that will be helpful. Well, let's just talk about what causes stress. And so since it's a small group, we'll be able to easily get a list of things that create stress in your lives, if you're willing to share. If not, we can do some other generic stuff. But what causes the stress?
Too much worry.
Say that again?
Too much worry about what happened to student.
So your children, stress about what they're going through. Okay? So well, you said worry. I want to make sure. Worry about children. And definitely, having teens is a stressor. I don't know if that's on that list that I handed out. I don't think it is, but it sure should be. For a couple of people come in just now, here's a kind of a little generic stress test you can take at some point. But teens, having teens kind of raises the blood pressure a little bit in our lives. I have 2 teenagers myself. They're the 14 and 15 years old, and so girls at that. And it's a little different from when they were in grade school and junior high. And so that can be very stressful. Thank you. What else causes the stress?
Feeling that I'm communicating ineffectively with my team.
Okay.
That generates an enormous amount of stress for me.
Communicating ineffectively. With teens. And I have to warn you now, I'm not the best speller. So for those of you here and those of you watching, forgive me, but that's okay. So yeah, that's huge. And especially because communication with our teens is a huge piece. I think I even did a whole presentation on teen communication earlier in the year. And because that in of itself is a topic we could talk about all night long. Absolutely. Other stressors in life.
Okay, anything which doesn't go according to the plan? Yes.
Life not going according to plan.
At least a day.
What's that?
At least a day.
Yeah.
A day at a time.
A day not going, let alone. Okay, good. Other things that causes stress.
We put too much on our plates.
Overload, good. We'll come back to that, definitely. Any other stressors in life?
Lack of control over a situation. There's nothing new under the sun, but nowadays, you can lose your job in a heartbeat because something happened out of your control. The company was sold. And
Absolutely.
fired.
Yeah. Excellent. Good. Any others?
Just have to
talk about this same topic, like the corporate world.
Oh, yeah.
I gave some thoughts on that, and so the model I came up with in terms of stress is really, I think, is really a mismatch between the demand and supply, in more like generic sense.
Mm-hmm.
As a stressor, really come from what is the external factor, for example, the expectation your manager wants you to deliver things or timeline, that's more like external. And then the internal is your own expectations, like our expectation of our children. It did not do well as we wished.
Yeah.
And the third factor, I think, is really from the environment. Because now in this digital world, there's just so much information. And sometimes it's very confusing. So that's how I kind of talk about this thing.
No, that's good. Yeah, I appreciate that. One of the things I really picked out there is unmet expectations. Can cause a lot of stress. Good. Any other big things popping out in our lives that are causing us stress?
So money, or lack thereof,
Yeah.
and then health.
Money and health, absolutely. The list could go on and on and on and on. And I think the other really important thing about stress is each one of us in this room deals with it differently and can absorb a certain amount differently. Some personality types tend to be the type that, wow, very little bother them. Other personality types, the little slight change in life just overwhelms them and they're frazzled to no end. And we have to know kind of where we fall on that spectrum. Are we the type that really gets overwhelmed and stressed easily? Or are we the type that just really nothing seems to bother? There's some other new kind of personality stuff called the highly sensitive person. And this is a personality type that those that just seem to really be affected by everything around them or other people's emotions, just everything really affects them deeply, while others low on that kind of scale, again, aren't affected by much. And so that's something that we have to, factor in as well. And that not one skill or tool, and we'll talk a lot about skills or tools, but to me tonight, that's really not the biggest part. But if you want it to be, we can, because you can Google, you can get on Pinterest, you can get all sorts of lists of fantastic ways to deal with stress. We've seen the list, and they're generic, but there's some good stuff on them, but what works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. I think the bigger question tonight that I would like to address is what keeps us from doing those things? What keeps us from looking at our stress or what I call also providing ourselves with self-care? Self-care is really important in life, but somehow it escapes us. What's our thoughts on that? What is keeping us from taking care of ourselves and providing self-care? Time. So we're gonna make a different list here. I never have enough board space, but that's all right. So time. Say more. What's that?
We don't prioritize.
Okay.
We prioritize something else.
We don't prioritize well. We just go, go, go.
Or I think if we prioritize, we kind of put ourselves last.
Yeah.
Like it's always, the kids, your husband, the dog, whatever, and then it gets back to the time because you put everybody else first. At the end of the day, you're too tired, go to bed, do the same thing the next day.
Absolutely. And if we're being honest, and maybe this is in telling of who showed up tonight, but men and women handle stress differently, right? And I think men generally, stereotypically, are more willing to take time in self-care. We'll go golfing, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll ignore our families, we'll watch TV. But moms tend to be No, I gotta do. And if I take time for myself, what does that mean about me? Selfish, absolutely. So I think moms have a lot of guilt and a lot of shame about taking care of themselves and dealing with their stress in life for them. Would we agree? Disagree? What's our thoughts on that? How's our lone man in the audience feel about that? What do you think? Men do better at taking care or taking time for themselves than women?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, as a counselor, that's my experience, and in the core, that's stereotypical. Of course, there's going to be some men that don't take care of themselves at all, and there's going to be some women that absolutely take care of themselves. But just generally speaking, I think it's a valid thing to look at, and especially to learn how to not feel guilty to take some time. Who's read the children's book by Shel Silverstein, The Giving Tree? Anybody heard of that book or read it? Okay, it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. Again, it's like the size of a Dr. Seuss book, but it's really powerful. And the whole concept is that there's this tree that this boy goes to, and the tree gives and the boy takes, and it provides fruit and it provides wood and it provides shelter and shade and it provides all these things as the boy grows up. But over time, the tree gives and gives and gives until eventually it's a stump and it can't give anymore. And the boy's sad. Well, now he's an old man. He's sad. The tree's sad. And it's just an interesting thing that, and we do it as humans all the time, and I think that's what Shel Silverstein's trying to teach us, is if we give and give and give and take care of everybody else around us and we neglect ourselves, eventually we're going to have nothing else to give. And there's a lot of research that talks about the role stress plays in our sicknesses and our diseases in the world, our mental health issues in the world, that really stress comes down to a common denominator, depending on whether it's acute stress or chronic stress and whatnot. And a lot of times we live in a world where we just get very used to stress, where it's kind of constant. And I work a lot with adolescents, and adolescents are under a lot of stress. I saw one little thing, whether it was accurate or not, they're saying adolescents are scoring the same amount of stress as those in the 50s who were sent to insane asylums. Again, I'm not going to put a lot of stock on it. It was found on the internet. But it was interesting. And I being a therapist in the last 6 months really, I've had an influx of adolescent clients. And a lot of it is, they come in for anxiety and depression predominantly. But again, I think behind that is this overload idea. They are overloaded with a lot of different things. And we, as parents and adults, are overloaded with a lot of things going on. And if we are overloaded and inundated with a lot of stimulus coming at us and responsibilities and pressures, what do we end up doing? Stress. Shutting down. And then we shut down and we don't do anything, then that starts to look like depression. Or we have breakdowns and it looks like anxiety. We have panic attacks. And so again, I think stress, depression, anxiety all go hand in hand quite significantly. And a lot of it comes down to, yes, each one of these things, but one of the big culprits in today's society is overload. We go with no moment to pause and take care of ourselves. So, with that, any thoughts going through your head that you want to share? Or anything you want to ask, share about what we're talking about?
The comments you made, women stress, I think that actually actually backed up by research.
Absolutely.
I think in a way, I think women, we tend to be sensitive. That's I think we tend to, also we tend to be perfectionist. I think that's definitely a factor. And I think that's the perfectionist. I think sometimes we just set the standard pretty high. I want to.
You gotta be super mom. You gotta be the soccer mom. You gotta be the wife. You gotta be the employee. You gotta be. And there's a lot going on. Absolutely.
Honestly, I think is women, we tend to, overthink. We tend to
Overthink. Yeah, I think
that's actually, it's a lingering. Actually, that
I think it lingers.
Yeah. So those two factors, I think, add a lot more stress to women.
You look at it from every angle possible.
Yeah.
That is true.
And tend to, just act quick. So I think we just need to channel our stress and turn that into action instead of overthinking.
Yeah, and it's hard because that's your nature. And so we have to learn about ourselves as both differences in the sexes, men and women, how we deal with things. We got to learn about our own personalities and how we deal with things, and learn how to maybe get some skills in communication, maybe, prioritization, and all of that, health, finances, all these things that can, again, inundate us with overload. I love that word because I think that's really what stress is. It's an overload, a sensory overload. And we live in a world where we are connected 24/7. We never stop. Our phones are with us 24/7. They're by our bedside. How many turn your phones off at night before you go to bed? No way. A few of you do, good. Some of you don't. And so it's just we have, whether it's conscious or subconscious, a lot of us have a constant state of information coming in. And so one of the things I suggest my clients to do at times is to disconnect. And they freak out. I can't do that. I got work. I got to check email. I got to make sure I'm available for my kids. I got to. And interesting though, isn't it? 20 years ago, that wasn't an issue. Our kids carried when we were kids, we carried a quarter in our pocket or a dime or whatever it was, and to make sure we could get to a payphone and call our parents if something was needed. And that was only if it was an absolute emergency. And now us parents are many of us conditioned to need our kids to have their phone with them. I'll often suggest to my parents that I work with, because when I work with teens, I conjointly work with the parents. I rarely work with a teen if a parent's not willing to come in as well. And so I'll tell the parent, well, let's talk about the phone, because 9 times out of 10, a phone is an issue in a lot of the issues that teens are dealing with. And when I suggest they maybe take the phone away, a lot of times I can't do that. I won't be able to get a hold of them. What will I do? How many teachers complain that it's the parents texting the kids in the middle of class, not their friends? And so again, this constant connection, constant thing of overload of information and availability of everything in our life deals with stress. So, okay, kind of got off topic there on a tangent. Other than time, anything else? Time, I'm going to say guilt. We talked about that. That keeps us from taking care of ourselves and doing those things that can de-stress us. Anything else keeps us from taking care of ourselves?
The sheer complexity of life. I mean, in my house, I have one kid, and she has a schedule that is more complicated than anything I'd have dreamt of as a child.
Yeah.
And I have my work schedule, and my partner has his work schedule, and we have this combined schedule.
Yeah.
And we're scheduled to death sometimes.
Yeah.
Tonight we're in 2 different places. Life just seems to be increasingly complex every year.
It does. There is validity to that. It is. My wife and I talk regularly about, holy cow, this is crazy. We are, again, we have 14, 15. Don't ruin it for me if it doesn't change when they hit 16 or 17. But my hope is when my oldest gets her license, that will alleviate some time for me so they can drive themselves places.
That'll just give you more stress.
Well, I think it'll give my wife more stress. I think my personality type is I will be, here you go. Because I'm one of those people personally that very little ruffles my feathers. I'll let my wife take on that, and I'm sure she will stress enough for both of us. But no, there will be. I know there will be stress when I give her the keys for the first time. But I'm hoping it's a different type of stress. Just humor me and let me believe that. Okay. Anything else there we want to buy? I think that's huge. What else keeps us?
I don't know if, I guess this falls into the prioritizing category, but maybe thinking, like whatever the kids are going through, that's more important than what we're going through or what stresses us out. So kind of like we have to help the kids or fix the kids or whatever before we can do that with ourselves.
No, absolutely, and yeah, it does go.
But that kind of goes hand in hand. Like a lot
it does.
Of ours, if the kid was fixed or not doing that or whatever,
right.
We wouldn't have some of that stress. So,
on the contrary, I have caught myself giving great advices to the kids, but I do not do that. Like taking priority, like myself on priority.
Yeah.
I help them, but I don't practice it myself.
I don't think you're alone. So what she said was, gives great advice to her kids, but can't take the advice herself. And that absolutely, we all probably have had that experience before. And so my hope is tonight that you leave here with a sense of urgency, that may be a little strong, but the importance of giving yourself permission to take care of yourself. And that it really is helping everybody else around you. It's helping your children, it's helping your significant other, it's helping you deal with life. Yes, you may miss out on something. Yes, you may have to say no to something or to someone or to your children. But really taking some time for you has to happen. If not, that chronic stress will just build and build and build until, again, it manifests itself physically. It manifests itself emotionally through mental health. It will eventually take its toll. That I can promise. I see it every day of my professional life in having people come in finally going, I can't, I'm done. And you don't want to get to that point because then you're of no help to anybody in your circle, and that's really important.
When you said, taking time to take care of yourself, do you have any specific tips and what you find that work best?
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about what, because, as I said in the beginning, I don't know, maybe I said that before you stepped in, is the question is, okay, well, tips to what do we do? If we do take the time, what do we do to reduce our stress? And so we want to get a list together, but understanding that it's, again, what works for one person may not work for another. It's like I work in addiction, and a lady came in struggling with alcohol. She had been to a previous therapist, and the therapist said, if you will just do yoga, you will never want to drink. Wow, if it was that easy, this would be really great. And the lady didn't even like yoga. So, and so she goes, please don't tell me just to do yoga. And so, though it can be for some people a good tool for whether it's alcohol or stress. But that does lead us to an important also topic that I think as adults we have to be wary of. And that is, before we get to the healthy coping skills with stress, let's talk about some unhealthy coping skills of stress. Because I think if we're overstressed and we don't have the skills and tools to deal with it effectively, we quite naturally will deal with it somehow. We all cope with our stress. The question is it effective or ineffective? And so, what are potential, I know you won't be speaking of yourself, but maybe someone you know, a friend, of course. How do your friends deal with stress ineffectively?
Screaming, yelling.
Okay, we scream, we yell. So I'm going to put that under kind of anger. We let anger get the best of us in our stress, absolutely. Other ways in which people deal with their stress ineffectively. Glass of wine, is what I was going to hear. So, drinking, specifically that glass of wine. Good. Others? We'll come back to that. Any other ineffective ways we deal with stress?
I mean, not talking about it or not communicating, because then if you bottle it up, it just leads to the screaming or yelling.
There you go. In some people. So some people bottle up their stress. And eventually, I always say it's like a pressure cooker. It will eventually explode. And yes, in the form of yelling, screaming, drinking, whatnot.
Sometimes I can get hyper-focused on non-urgent work rather than the urgent work that's stressing me out.
Yeah, so kind of time wasters.
I don't know what the heck that even is, but...
Yeah, absolutely.
Using the drugs.
Drugs?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we live in a very pro-pot culture. We live in a very pro-pills culture. And so if we go to our doctor with any form of symptoms of stress and anxiety, first thing they do is what? Give us a prescription. Yeah, we'll walk out with a prescription guaranteed with not asking any backup questions of, well, what's going on in your life? Well, some do. I don't want to characterize all doctors as not doing that, but many won't ask a lot of kind of situational questions. What's going on in your life? What are you doing? What's your lifestyle like? And all of that. And well, here's the pill. This will make your symptoms go away. How about food? Food is a stressor. I mean, not stressor, can be. It's a stress reliever. It's a coping mechanism. Many of us are stress eaters. We grab our favorite junk food. And it's, how many people grab carrots and broccoli when they're stressed out? Not very many, right? That's not what we're reaching for when we're stressed out. And so that's a big one. Shutting down, yeah. Kind of bottling up, but shutting down completely. So these are all the go-to. These are the easy ones.
By sitting down, stop doing it.
Yeah, sometimes we just stop. Sometimes, again, we bottle it up. We don't talk, or we withdraw. We isolate. I think that those are big for some people.
Just consider depression.
Yeah, could be, yeah, and then that looks like, right? Or maybe it is. And stress can create depression and anxiety again. But I think we have to, going to kind of jump topics, but I think we got to look at situational. There's situational depression, there's situational anxiety. And again, I think a lot of stress or chronic stress, we have to understand, oh, is this biochemical or is this life and what's going on in our life? So those are things that we don't want to do. Along with really quick food, some basic ingredients that when somebody comes in, say with anxiety or high stress, I ask them, what's your sugar intake like? What's your caffeine intake like? And what's your nicotine intake like? These are all stimulants, and they're not going to help our stress, even though in the moment we think they do. Smoking is a really good example in that, because most people that smoke will say, well, they do it to calm themselves down. But yet, nicotine's a stimulant. And so it's going to ultimately long-term raise stress and anxiety, we'll say anxiety as well. But why? And now we'll get into some of the what works. And that is, well, when somebody takes a break to smoke when they're feeling stressed, what are they doing for 5 to 7 minutes? That's the average time it takes to smoke a cigarette.
Taking a break.
Taking a break, number one, good. They're just, I'm going out on the patio, I'm going to the break room, or a break outside, not break room anymore, right? And I'm getting away from stressful environment, number one. What else are they doing for that 5 to 7 minutes?
Talking on the phone.
Maybe talking to someone else, very good. So that can be a stress reliever. Okay, we're already identifying here some of these good stress relievers. So one, take a time out. We can learn a lot from smoking. All right, good. Maybe we talk to others. Connect with someone. Talk to someone, good. What else are we doing for that 5 to 7 minutes? Me time.
Or you're removing yourself from a situation. Breathing.
Deep breathing, right? That's what we're doing. And somebody mentioned another one, and I'll get to that too. But deep breathing will always be on the list of stress reliever activities. Taking time to take deep breaths, getting oxygen to the brain, lowering anxiety and stress, that's always on the list. There's going to be some hallmark things that are just, you'll see on each list after each list. And deep breathing / meditation will be. If you haven't looked into meditation as a frequent practice in your life, I highly recommend it. But people, from the media, what do we think of when we think of meditation?
Some guru up and
Right.
mountain top.
There you go. Somebody sitting Indian style with their hands like this, saying Om up in the mountains of Tibet, right? No, it can be. People do spend a lot of time learning how to meditate, but it can be really basic. And what I tell people, it's really the practice of clearing your mind and not thinking about anything. And not judging the thoughts that come into your mind. Let them come in, not judge them, let them go. Focus on your breath, focus on a word, focus on an object, but not letting your mind race like it does 24/7. And yes, particularly more so for women than for men. They say the average person has 15 to 30,000 thoughts a day, and women twice as many. I don't know how they determine that, but I believe it. Women are constantly thinking and overanalyzing. You talked about that, and perfection, all that. So shutting down the brain a little bit and the thoughts and the chatter that's going on up here is going to reduce our stress. So I think, and research backs it up, I agree with, I should say, that smoking, this is what's de-stressing people, not the chemicals, not the nicotine, is they're doing all these things. Oh, somebody said out now, they're going outside. Being in nature is also shown to reduce stress and to lower. Now, some people aren't nature people. It doesn't mean you have to become a camper and an avid hiker. But getting outside, have we heard of Andrew Weil, the Tucson doctor that's naturopathic, but he's an MD. In his book on happiness, he talks about we're suffering from a nature deficit in our society and culture. We're indoors constantly. We're in, artificial lighting constantly. We need some outdoors, fresh air, sun, vitamin D, stuff like that. That helps reduce stress. Other big ones, because exercise is always on a list to decrease stress. Now I know that comes back to our earlier list of time. Where can I fit this in? I'm going constantly. again, we have to learn how to prioritize and go, what's going to give us a better quality of life versus what's not. Before I get to a few more, what have you found works when you actually do it?
Hobbies.
Hobbies. Good. Having a hobby is huge for stress relief. Being able to sit down and do something that's kind of mind-numbing or kind of interest to you outside of the constant thing of life. Absolutely. Hobbies are really big. Good. Any other thing you've found?
Reading or moving.
Yeah. We need some kind of just, well, reading's not too mindless, right? Reading is a mind-engaged thing, but it's also can be just entertaining, depending on what kind of book we're reading. But those are good, fiction books or, and movies. Something that comes up on the list a lot is laughing. How often do we really laugh? Or are we so serious in life that we're so focused on everything that we don't laugh? You will find that on a list of a lot of stress relieving things. That laughter produces the feel-good hormones in the body, and it makes us less stressed. So that's something I'd encourage you to evaluate in your life is, how often do I really get to laugh and really smile and, good deep belly laughs? When was the last time you did that? Think about that, because that's always on the list.
Take one day at a time.
Okay, kind of having a philosophy. One day at a time. Philosophy, that's big, yeah. Not worrying about future. Most stress comes from worrying about future stuff. Depression, anger comes from worrying about or thinking and dwelling about the past. Stress and anxiety come from thinking about the future. So if we spend a lot of time worrying about what's coming or what happened, we're going to be more stressed. Absolutely. So that's big. Another good little philosophy is the Serenity Prayer, if we've heard of that. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's just a good little maxim to go, okay, what in my life can I control and what can I not control? What can I change or what can I? If I can't, I got to learn to let that go. If I can, I got to do something. I can do something about it. But so often, how much do we spend time stressing about things that are absolutely out of our control? A lot of times. People have high anxiety and stress that come to my office. One of my first things is to say, if they watch the news, shut it off. Nightly news to me is a stress ball of whatever. I mean, it's just, I stopped watching the news years ago because what you turn it on, what do you hear? I mean, just all the crud that's going on. Here's a shooting here, somebody got raped here, this happened, somebody broke in here, this accident, this person died. It's just all, in my opinion, junk. You might get about 30 seconds of valid information from a nightly newscast. That's just my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. But I just find it really gets us worked up, a lot of us. And if we're sensitive people, we're hearing all that negative stuff, it's really going to affect us, I believe. So maybe that'll be turn off the news. Let me see, am I missing anything there? Anything coming up in your own minds?
In some scenarios, to change your perspective, that also helps a lot.
Attitude.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because there's some, I'm saying there's some probably real stressful situation, but you just like focus, get your best, do your best, and then when you overcome that, you become, more confident, and then stronger, and then you'll be less less stressful in the down the road. So I think the perspective is actually quite important.
It's huge.
Some scenario.
Absolutely. I always wish I had more time than I have. But let me just really, I'm going to erase all this if that's okay. Because that really is big. We're talking about things that we can do physically. And those are all really good things. Again, on a list like that, what works for one person may not work for another person. We can, journaling is another thing. Writing things out and not letting them stay up here all the time is a huge, it can be for some people, a really good thing to have a notebook beside your bed if you're having a hard time falling asleep, is getting it out of here and just writing it down. There's an acronym called HALT. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, those can induce stress. So sleep pattern is a big thing that we have to look in our lives to see how well we're dealing with the stressors. If we're not getting good sleep, we're probably not going to deal with stressful events in our life very well. But then that comes down to time, that comes down to all these things. Well, after my kids go to bed, it's the only time I can do things, and I stay up till 12, 1 o'clock, and then I get up at 5 o'clock. That's not going to work for very long for most people. Some people can do it just fine. Most of us need more and better quality sleep. I would say probably studies would show that, as a country, we are very sleep deprived. And that will play a huge role. Hungry, I will add just to that one, nutrition. What we eat can deal, again, back to the sugar, back to just our diet. Looking at how our diet's affecting how we deal with stress is another huge thing. But let me close on, I think, a really big thing. So, I should always remember to bring my own markers here. Okay. Well, no, you can't see that either, can you? Let's try this one. So we're going to put stress as an emotion. For now, for sake of our argument. Emotions tend to drive what? What do emotions drive? Actions, right? We'll get to thoughts in a moment, because that's really important. Or our reactions. We react to how we're feeling. If we're stressed, going back to that yelling, screaming, withdrawing, doing all these negative things, right? So the question is, what causes stress? Well, on the surface, situations, life, circumstances cause stress, and sometimes they do. But to really get us stressed, I believe there's a center part here, and that is our thoughts and perceptions about the situation. So what was said just a moment ago, change our perspective, or what was the word you used? Thoughts or perspective, wasn't that, but it was in jest, that's kind of what you were talking about, right? And so when we can really catch, when we're feeling stressed out, getting in the habit of going, what's going through my mind? What am I thinking right now that's raising my stress level? That can really, our thoughts and our perceptions really play a big role in how stressful events in our life affect us. But they go unchecked, so then we do things like, there's a list of what we call distorted thinking patterns that can raise our stress and our anxiety. We can take things personally. We can assume. We can catastrophize. We can have kind of black and white thinking. Those are some of the common ones that can raise our stress level. And if we can catch that, and if we can say, wait a minute, how am I thinking about this? What's my perception? How can I change that in regards to this situation? Then that can be a huge way to alleviate stress. Now our actions can also alleviate stress, and that's all the list that we did just a moment ago. Because definitely we can do some things to alleviate stress, and all those things that we talked about earlier do work. Along with exercise, yoga, back to that. I'm not going to say it's going to reduce all your stress, like that lady was told about her alcohol, but yoga can be a very effective stress reliever. I think we hit all the major ones. Any questions here on the thoughts, changing the way we think and perceive things in dealing with stress? Does that make sense? Or it's easier said than done, because we get into habit in thinking certain ways and believing certain things. But really being aware of our thinking pattern is a huge way to deal with our stress. Anything we didn't talk about in regards to stress that you hoped we would have tonight? Or any specific questions?
Helping teens with this, or is that next week? Oh, next month. Helping teens, best way to help teens cope with their stresses. When to know when to back up and when to know when to jump in.
That's a great question. My immediate response is model. Model how to deal with stress. Let them see you cope with your stress effectively, and they will more likely follow. If we do what you said earlier, which is, here, I'm going to give you some great advice and do this, but they never see you doing it. One of the biggest complaints I get from adolescents is when we as parents, and I know I've fallen in this trap, act in hypocrisy. Is when we have the mentality of do what I say, not what I do. That does not do well with teens. So first model. Go ahead.
Just happened today, there was a news talk about the pediatrician recommend depression screening for all teens. I was surprised, but since you're working with teens and some of the families, so what do you think now teenagers are so stressed or getting into depression? What are the key contributors?
Can we go a couple minutes over? Sure. Is that okay?
Yeah. We have until 8 o'clock.
Oh, great. Yeah. Oh, I'm like thinking I got 5 minutes. This makes me very happy. So good. Whew. Excellent. I don't know why I've done this, like I said, for 4 years. I should know it ends at 8. Let's talk about that. So, like I said, I've had an influx of teens in the last 6 months coming in with anxiety and depression and stressed out. First thing we can do, and I ask teens this question, what happens, so I'm pretending that you're teens now, when you go to an adult, whether it's a parent, a teacher, or other trusted adult, and a teen says, I'm so stressed out and overwhelmed, what do you think they say we say as adults and parents and teachers and whatnot?
Don't worry about that, or that stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah, you don't know what stress is. Wait till you have to pay bills and you have kids and you have a job. So right there, we just negate their feelings and their experiences of stress. And so one thing we can do first is listen and validate their stress. Even if we think, that's not much stress, well, we're an adult. We have different stressors. They're a teen. Their brains aren't developed. They're highly emotional. They're, because of brain development reasons. And so yes, they're experiencing things. But we also, I believe, have to acknowledge that teens are experiencing different stressors than we experienced. Yes, there's some similar ones. There's the ones that have been there since the beginning of time. But they are experiencing things that you and I never experienced. Predominantly around social media, phones, and that being connected 24/7. I have no idea what's that like. I'm so grateful I didn't grow up with that technology at my fingertips, but it is a big stressor. But here's a common list I get, or I create with kids create with me. Number one things stressing them, or not number one, no list of order necessarily. And I may say something that you disagree with, and that's okay. If you say I don't agree with that, you won't offend me whatsoever. Pressured from even as early as junior high all the way up through high school is what, in early high school, what degree are you going to get? What are you going to be? What's your career going to be? And they're getting a lot of pressure on this, which I personally, professionally and personally think is crazy. The average college graduate changes their major 7 times. So even if they have an idea what they're going to be, that's probably going to change at some point. There's going to be a few that knew they were going to be a lawyer from 5 and they become one. Those are few and far between. They have to get to college, they have to try some things, they have to try new classes and this and that, and they're going to change their mind. And that's not a bad thing. Now, it doesn't mean they shouldn't ponder and think about it and have some ideas, but to really be pressured from us parents and or teachers and institutions to go, what are you going to do? You got to know where you're going to be.
I think that necessarily just from the parents and teachers, actually to a large extent, it's really this college experience.
Yes.
Because the college application, they ask you what's your passion. You
Right.
have to really write about it and all that. You know, if kids are still kind of wondering
Excellent.
what to do, you know, they're
Great point. So yeah, it's a lot of different areas. The colleges are coming in and doing that as well. And so they're feeling stress, and they don't feel if they don't have an answer right now at 14, 15, they're going to be failures. I mean, I had a student, a teen come into my office a few weeks ago. He's 14 years old, he's a freshman. Anxiety, stress, and he's like, well, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and I'm afraid I'm going to be a failure. I'm like, you're 14. Don't worry about that. Go play with your friends. Go ride your bike. Go do something, you know. It's okay. That's just, again, me. But then come down a notch, and that's just grades. Schoolwork, tests. That's causing kids. Now, we can experience that. We also went through high school, and okay, that's pretty standard. But again, a lot of kids are meant to believe that if they don't get straight A's, they're going to be a failure. And we don't want that. Even as a college, when I taught ASU in the master's program for the social work program, you know, I'd have students, if they got a B, I mean, they were falling apart. And I'm like, don't fall, it's okay. You didn't do great on this paper, but not a big deal. I promise nobody's going to ask you what your grades were when you're sitting across from them and counseling them. I've been doing this for 12 years since I've graduated. 12 years since I graduated, and not once has anybody asked me, well, what grades did you get in college? Nobody cares.
well, high school.
High school, they're trying to get into colleges and whatnot, and that's important. I don't want to say it's not, but I also don't want them feeling like they're going to be failures if they.
Selective college,
Right.
They, you know, in college.
Yeah.
If we get like 1B, you're out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, like, okay.
Yeah, and so some of it's legitimate, some of it's we can't get away from, but they're experiencing it. Social, and again, that comes from just friends in general, having friends. One of the biggest needs that teens have is the need to belong and the need to be accepted and to fit into a group. And obviously right now in our country, that's a big thing right now. Every time there's a school shooting, it's from someone who didn't belong, who didn't have a group, who didn't connect. And so, but kids, even your mainstream kids, are still feeling the pressure if they're not popular or if they're not liked, or I know I'm experiencing in the 8th grade, 9th grade, having teenage girls, the drama that can ebb and flow daily. Oh, their best friend, oh, you don't like them now? What happened? You know, well, you can't keep up with this friend thing. Again, social media. When I hear the word streaks, that just sends a tinge down my spine. Do we know what that is? Having streaks on their social media, right? If you don't, you know, they need daily, they keep track of how much days they get a message from a certain friend or not. You guys know what streaks are, right? Okay. And so it's constantly going, and then if they're going to be on vacation, oh no, here they give somebody else their login information. Here, log in to make sure my streaks keep going. And they're stressed if their streaks end, right? Stress if streaks end. Okay, there you go.
For a week one time when our streak died.
He didn't talk to you for a week. There you go.
2 days.
So there we go, from them themselves. But it's a big deal to them. We look at it and go, are you crazy? That's stupid. Why bother? But it's real to them. How many followers do they have? How many likes do they have on their picture? If they don't have a certain amount of likes, oh my gosh, what's wrong? They start to feel the pressure. True? Maybe not you, but your peers? Okay. Then dating is a big factor, for some. When to date, when to start, how to date, exclusive, group, this, that. A lot of things going on there. So social, degree, grades, family stress, just what's going on at home, what's going on in their lives outside of school. Some of them sports or extracurricular activities. I'm going to stick with sports just for a moment because our athletes, some of them are really under a lot of pressure to perform at their peak, especially if they're trying to get scholarships, they're trying to do whatnot. They got to be the best, and there's a lot of expectation on that. We're talking about some have religious expectations and things, and living up to those standards and activities. Some are struggling with sexuality. What am I? I'm seeing a big influx of kids questioning and wondering, am I bisexual? Am I gay? Am I lesbian? Am I straight? Am I pan? There's all these sexual terms out there, and they don't know, and they're confused of what they're experiencing. These are probably some of the more common ones that I get on the list when I have teens come into my office. And so they feel, the words they've used, when I say, what does this feel like? Exhausted, overwhelmed. One said crushing, pain. These are the words that they've given me. So again, what can we do? We can help them maybe put in perspective some of the things, or know what's causing them stress. Ask your teens, what's stressing you out? And then don't belittle it. Don't say, well, that's not stressful. You don't know what stress is. They're experiencing a high rate of stress. We are experiencing a very sharp increase in teen suicide in our nation, everywhere. And that's a really big thing.
Parents are willing to listen, but kids don't want to talk.
No, they by nature don't. And we could talk a lot about that. One, we just have to give them the opportunity to. Whether they take it every time, they may not. But when we listen consistently, or when we offer a open invitation to talk without judgment, without lecture, that's what kids are. They're afraid. They're going to get lectured. They're going to get judged. They're going to get in trouble for whatever they're experiencing. And we want to take that off the table. We want to develop a relationship with them. A lot of my presentations here over the years have talked about developing a strong relationship with your teen, and that's really important. It's never too late, but it's better when it starts younger. So back to the communication one that we talked about earlier. Learning communication skills with your teens is really good. There's a lot of good resources for that. If you have questions, ask me after. But knowing what's stressing them out, validating it, and then giving them opportunities to maybe take some things off their plate too. We talked about being overwhelmed as adults. So many things coming at us. Well, our teens are experiencing the same thing. And sometimes some of it's our doing, some of it's not. But sometimes we put them in one thing right after another, or do. Maybe they need to take some things off their plate. Maybe they don't need to be in every extracurricular activity. Maybe they need some downtime, but it's not this downtime. Maybe we need some limits here. There's research is starting to really develop. We won't know for a few years what this is doing to both teens and adults. This is not a teen problem. This is I think a societal problem. But definitely in the development of the teenage brain and spending so much time on a device, I think is causing a lot of stress. I've even had teens I'm working with will admit, not in front of their parents, but maybe when their phone's taken away from them and they get away from all that daily inundated, they feel less stressed. They feel better. They won't admit that because they want their phone, but they are. Some of them are more stressed, but many of them are less stressed. And so
Already studies show focus on the smartphone actually change your brain chemistry.
absolutely. And we're just going to get more. So what she said is research is already showing that time on here changes our brain chemistry. And when that happens in adolescence, when the brain is really sensitive and developing, I think we're going to see some long-term challenges down the road once we get some longitudinal studies. The average kid right now, latest research says, is on a device 7 hours a day. And so that's average. So some are probably on 10, 12, which just blows my mind. Again, those are something you and I didn't have to deal with. We might have sat in front of the TV a little too long, but we probably didn't set 7 hours a day because they have it with them at school. Schools are starting to get really lax. Some teachers are really hardcore with it. Some could care less. I know my schools my kids go to, it's hit and miss. Or the teachers just are tired and they can't keep up with it. So kids are on phone constantly. So that's a big one, monitoring the phones, listening to them, hearing them out, understanding what's stressing them out, and then making some adjustments potentially, or at least just helping them go, whoa, take a deep breath. You don't have to worry about this now. And let's talk about social, know who their friends are if they're willing to talk, address family issues. That's why I always work with the parents along with the teen, because it's usually when a teen comes in with problems, it's usually a family problem, not just a teen problem. I don't want parents to think they can just say, hey, fix my kid. No, I want them to look in the mirror too. But then that goes into modeling how to deal with stress. Taking some time out, taking a day to go hiking, taking a day to go to a movie as a family, taking a day to do some things just to disconnect from life in a healthy way. So I hope that answers that question, because again, let me go back. So when they do this, they get overwhelmed, then what does that look like? What do they do? Well, they withdraw. I don't know about you, but when I get overwhelmed, I don't do anything. I have all these things to do, and somebody says I end up spending time doing trivial things, something, focusing in on something way unimportant, but nothing gets done. And for a teen, when they just withdraw and they don't do anything, they lose interest in their activities, what does that look like? It looks like depression. Then they go to the doctor, and what does the doctor say? Here's some medication. When really, this is just my theory, a lot of times they're not depressed, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed, and they're exhausted. And they need to learn to take a deep breath. And I think we need to learn how to take a deep breath as well. And do some of those skills, teach them, give them some opportunity to learn how to meditate, time to exercise, seeing us as parents exercise, eat healthy, taking time for ourselves.
Garron, did we go over the stress test?
Oh, we didn't go over it. So, thank you. So you pass this out, and this is just a common one that you can find online. Let me get my answer key kind of out.
Also,
and they're learning strategies on how to manage their stress. And if your child is not here, you will be able to also see the PowerPoint. So for the kids, all the PowerPoints will be on our Hamilton website. And for the parents, we'll have all the videos and any PowerPoints and materials. And then also one last thing I wanted to mention is the packet that we put together. I found this great site that had 52 proven stress reductors. And I kind of read through all of them, and some of them are simple, but if you start incorporating a lot of these in your everyday life, it really will make a difference.
Just don't try to do all 52 at once or get overwhelmed and you won't do anything. Right?
That's right.
So this one, again, there's a lot of different stress tests on the thing. It says here, if you get 300 or plus, your likelihood of an illness in the near future is about 80%. So 300 or plus, 80% of illness in the near future. This comes out of a Journal of Psychosomatic Research. If you get 150 to 299, your likelihood of illness in the near future is about 50%. If you're less than 150, you're at 30%. So if you scored less than 150, you're probably, I mean, in some respects, doesn't mean you're not dealing with stress. This is just one kind of outlook of stress. And just kind of giving you an idea what's going on in your life. I'll give you an example of myself. Fairly newly married, had one child, and then again, our kids are 12 months apart, so 4 months later, pregnant with our second child, not planned, it's not what we wanted, but now we're really grateful for it. And new job, buying a house, and I was in a job that one of my trainers goes, after he kind of got to know me and learned all this, he's like, wow, you must be totally stressed out. And I'm like, well, no, but man, yeah, I am going through a lot. I didn't even know I was experiencing a lot of stressful things, and so he at least saw it and noticed some things, and I didn't. So sometimes we can't see because we're right in it, and sometimes we need to take a step back and go, and something like this can help us go, wait a minute, wow, I have been going through a lot this last year. Whoa, again, I need to really do some self-care. And so there's something like this list. I didn't get a chance to look over it, but again, I'm sure it's fantastic. Some things will apply, some things won't to you, but you can go through and look through this, Google your own list. There's a lot of ways to reduce stress.
One thing I wanted to just mention, a lot of the kids in my anxiety depression group, there's a lot of parents that put so much stress on kids for academic success, and these kids feel it and they internalize it, and I think it's important to have conversations, those moments you can talk to your kids, have conversations that are not related to academics. Don't always ask them, did you do your homework? Did you do this? That interrogation as soon as they sit down and breathe after school, because they're, overloaded with all the learning in school, and I think you will get a lot more engaging conversation if you talk to them about other things, and open-ended questions, whether it's about movies or sports, or because even those conversations will lead for them, they'll confide eventually in other things that they're really stressed about. If otherwise, they'll just shut down if it's constantly academics.
Yeah.
Because they already feel that pressure from so many avenues. You want all parents want their kids to be successful academically, but I find that a lot of parents, they're so stressed about colleges and everything that they, just share all that with their kids, and they just, it's a fine balance of everything. But a lot of the kids already have self-imposed stress that they're perfectionists as it is. Like you said, 1B, and they freak out,
Yeah.
And so, but if you add on top of that, it just really causes so much anxiety, and then that's all they think about.
Yeah. Excellent. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
Would you please repeat, 5 items, the most to do to cope with the stress?
5 things that do maybe the best stress relievers.
Yeah.
I think from the list before, exercise is always going to be on a list to reduce stress. Nutrition, eating healthy, and doing that. Deep breathing and meditation is always going to be on a list of reducing stress. I just had it. What's that? Prayer and meditation. And that kind of takes me to another topic as well. Is spirituality or religiosity, and I think there's a difference between the two. Somebody can be religious but not spiritual, or spiritual and not religious. But I think, or some sort of faith, many people find helps reduce stress because they put that faith in a higher power or whatnot, or a sense of some purpose bigger than themselves. That can be a big stress reliever. Laughter is one we talked about, that research you'll see that on a lot of the lists that are research-based, and reducing stress that way. Hobbies and interests, another big one, of doing something that you enjoy, that you can just kind of lose yourself in for a little bit, is really big.
You mentioned sleep earlier. Do you think the stress makes poor sleep, or do you think that if you're not getting enough sleep, it adds to more stress?
Yes. so question is, does stress cause poor sleep, or does poor sleep cause stress? And the answer is yes. And so it's kind of tough, because a lot of people can't sleep because they're sitting there mulling over in their head all the things that they need to be doing, should be doing, the things that are going on in their life, their relationships are failing, their work that's stressful, their kids are stressful, and they're just sitting up here in their head. And that's where sometimes, again, having a notebook beside the bed, writing all those things down can be a huge stress reliever. Not to be self-serving, but I'm biased, counseling. Don't be afraid to talk to someone. Now, if you have family and friends that are non-judgmental, unbiased, and can just listen well, great. Use friends and family. They're a lot cheaper. But don't hesitate to maybe go to a therapist and just say, hey, I'm stressed. I need to talk it out. I find in therapy that just the fact of somebody coming in and talking about something, yes, with a stranger, with somebody that's not emotionally tied to them, that's not going to whatever, but can just listen. Maybe provide some insight, but I think a lot of the work I do is listening and letting somebody that's spent so much time up here in our head talk it out, and then they just go, oh, I feel better. And I didn't do anything. I just provided a listening and genuinely interested ear. And so going back to our teens too, being genuinely interested in listening to them, no matter how crazy we think they may be for their ideas or this or that or what they're really struggling with, we want to sincerely listen and then validate, wow, it must be really hard for you. I'm sorry you're going through that. And we don't always have to give advice too. They don't always want advice, especially from us as parents. They'll take advice from someone else, but they don't take advice from us very well. So I tell parents a lot of times, if you want your kid to learn something, find a trusted adult that they know and that you know, go to them, hey, can you tell my kid this? They'll tell your kid, and your kid will come home and go, I had this great idea, my teacher told me this, and it's just awesome. And you're thinking, I've told you that 10 times, but okay, we got to lower our pride and egos and just let somebody else suggest the idea. And so that's where, if you are I know there's educators in here, and especially the school social worker can be a huge resource for kids to go to talk about stress. So that's another thing. Maybe encourage them, go talk. You have a great school social worker here that can listen and empathize with them and give some great feedback if that's what they're seeking. And you're in good hands there with Rajani. I know that.
Garron, I was also going to lives, that kind of takes so much time, and it's always negative, because that can be overwhelming when you feel like you're taking on their problems, and it kind of just takes a lot of energy and stress too.
I was kind of thinking of, I guess, asking that, but I didn't know how to ask it. But so when you had the list of like stresses for the kids, and it comes to the friends, and you think the friends are a bad influence because of what they're doing, and they're getting in trouble, and they cause stress. But how can, even if the child says that, but how can you kind of agree or maybe suggest to find some new friends or not hang out with them, or it's better to be alone with those people? Because then it's, you just don't like them. Or,
right.
So how can you say that or suggest it without saying or suggesting it? You know what I mean? Like,
That's a great question. There's no easy way other than, there's no easy way. So the question is, how do you help a teen if they're having stress with friends, or we have a feeling as a parent that maybe this isn't a good influence on our kids? Because yes, who our kids hang around with are a big factor in who they become and what they do in life in some regards. And I think it is being able to, yes, listen to maybe the drama and the challenges. And the biggest thing is what kids don't want is us to judge their friends. Even if they're judging them, we can't judge them. They can say negative things about them. We can't. I find it helpful just to make some suggestions. What do you think you can do? Get them to come up with the idea. If they can come up with the idea and it's their idea, well, I can maybe branch out and meet some more people. Oh yeah, it's a great idea. Now they're not always going to say that, obviously, but looking for opportunities or maybe encouraging them to branch out. Hey, keep their friends. Oh, I know you love them. They're important to you. Their friends are everything to our teens. And so keep them, but hey, encourage them to branch out and make more friends. But that is a sensitive topic.
Even though kids don't say it, I think it really does matter to them that their parents like their friends. Because I remember even with my boys, there was this one kid that I did not like, and I was hoping they would drop him, But these kids, these three friends would always come over at the house, and one just never had good manners and was just like always teaching, negative stuff. And so I would just compliment the other friends. I would say, hey, Mike is so good at, he's always so respectful. I would not say anything negative about the other kid, but I would focus on the positive things about those two friends. And eventually they did lean more towards those two, because then they're like, yeah, Mom, I noticed that he's like that,
Yeah.
So it took time, but I just focused on the positive.
That's great.
and I know it's going to sound awful to say, but sometimes that's really hard to do.
It is. And there's levels too. I think we have to, if it's just some vibe we're getting or some characteristics or personality traits we don't like about their friend, that's one thing. If they're engaging in, again, what I call big ticket items, drugs, illegal behaviors, then we have a little more forceful look. This is not a good thing. You want to go down this path, this is what's going to potentially happen. I don't want this to happen to you. And you have to really think about this, but then again, somewhat putting it on them. Because if we try to make them, maybe you can. I don't know. My experience is if we try to make kids or say you can't hang out with that kid, I bet you, I guess I can, and they will find ways. If they come to school with them, they'll hang out with them. And so we can't limit always, but we can point out discrepancies, we can teach, we can then provide opportunities or encourage some other things. And by keeping a monitor on it is important, in knowing their friends, getting to know them, inviting them over, having them over, so we feel comfortable with that. It's probably one of the hardest questions you could ask, but it's a good one, because friends at this age is everything to them. And if we do criticize them, it doesn't usually go over very well.
No,
but
well, it's just kind of like, I guess, almost trying to make her see the big ticket items that you said are a big deal.
Right.
Because they can, their mind. not a big deal. Everybody does it. It's like, why are you talking about it?
Right. And I think another kind of off topic is, now we're getting to that time, aren't we? Another off topic though is having family values, having the kids know what are our family beliefs about X, Y, and Z, big ticket items, drugs, sex, things like this. Those are the big issues usually that come into my office. And whatever your beliefs are about them, they're your beliefs. But you might want to make sure your kids know what your beliefs are. Now, will they adopt it? I don't know. They're at the age, 14 to 18, that they're developing their own beliefs about things. They're being encouraged to, have their beliefs about things. And this week, or the last couple of weeks, and the next couple of weeks is a good example of that, with what happened in Florida and these walkouts that are being scheduled in the schools across the country and the state. They're starting to have their voice. They're starting to have their opinions about a lot of different things. And so talking to your kids, really getting to know them, know who they're hanging out with in that regards is big there. Any other final last minute questions on stress? And
I have one, it might be a little off topic, but when there's a stressful teen, is it typical for them to, if they kind of, well, maybe not lash out, but if they argue with, do they pick one parent other than another, or is that more common than the...
So when our kids are stressed out, do they go and pick out one parent or the other to talk to?
No, or
lash out at? I think so.
I'm the one who maybe I'm not doing something right because I'm the friend, I'm the, right?
Yeah, that can be. We have to, in parenting, here's parenting 101, maybe it's off topic, that's okay though. First and foremost, in all parenting situations, number one is we're on the same page. And that, or if we're not, we are in front of the kid, and then we talk about it offline and to discuss our differences. Because as soon as the kid know we have a difference of opinion on an issue, whether it's, again, who we hang out with or what we're doing, what our curfew is, blah, 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 yeah, well, they're going to absolutely attack the one that doesn't agree with them or agree with the other parent. So number one is be united in these issues, especially the serious big ticket items. If you're not, go to counseling and become united. That's really big. Or figure it out on your own. But parents that are not united, or parents that are having relationship issues, is also going to cause stress, a high stress for teens. Any kind of family turmoil is a big stressor for teens. So I guess the other encouragement would be, for your teen's sake, resolve that within yourselves and your family so that they're not taking it, because divorce or separation is always at the top of a list of stress for kids and adults. But you add that to this list of stuff, you're going to be just increasing your kids' stress. I mean, it happens and we can do it effectively, but just be aware of that, or any other personal stressors that we're going through that is bleeding over to our teens. Be really important. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I hope this was helpful.